Good afternoon and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show that is dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So here we are at the beginning of another week, and we are on episode number 26 of this week. And for those of you who are not familiar with what this week is an episode that kind of details what's going to go on the channel for the week, if there's any kind of announcements, and also kind of let you know what might be coming up in the future, that kind of thing. So it's just basically about announcements and content of the channel. So for this week we have just 3 regular programs. Ben's Album Challenge, which will feature Nectar, and I believe it's the Other Side album. Yes, it's the Other Side album. Monday night's Look Back at a Classic Rock album will feature an album I've been debating about doing for the past 6 months, and I always seem to never get around to it, so I've decided to do it this week. It's a bit of a poppy album. It comes from Styx, and it's their cornerstone album, the last album from the 70s from them. It's a very different kind of album for them. It's not like their predecessors, which were much more hard rock, progressive rock, arena rock type, and it isn't kind of as poppy as the albums that come after it. It's kind of in the middle somewhere, so it has that poppy element to it, no doubt about it, but there's lots of different types of instruments used on this. You know, there's one song on the album, Boat on the River, which has everybody playing something other than what they normally play. So pretty interesting album. It's one that grew on me over the years. A lot of the songs on it are fairly memorable songs too, so I look forward to finally doing Cornerstone from Styx from 1979. The next show up is Wednesday night, Favorites. So I do apologize to those people who watched the last episode, because I only did the top 15, thinking that top 15 was probably going to be good enough. But once I started doing it, I realized there's a lot more people that could have been involved in this. And one of the guys, DB, actually commented he wished I'd done a 25. And to be honest, so do I. But it's done, and I've learned something from it, that my interest in different countries' music has grown such a point now that it can be easily done 25 per country. So we will do that in the future. The next one up will be the Canadian, top 25 Canadians, but that won't happen this week. It'll be a little bit yet before I'm ready for that one. But I am going to do another top 25, and I've decided to do something that is going to be a little bit fun for me. It's during the 80s, I developed an interest in new wave music, but not so much because of me. I would never have gone out and pursued this on my own, but because I had a friend, and I moved to a different high school, and I was going there for 2 years, and while I was there I made friends. Well, I had friends from my other place that I started to get back in with that crowd, and my friend George had a room that he had big Martian murals and all kinds of space stuff that had been drawn on his wall by a girl that had been in our class before. And so every Saturday night, pretty much every week, he would have from about 10 o'clock until after midnight, he would have his fantastic stereo system he had, and he would just play all this kind of really new wave-ish stuff that I'd never heard before, like just lots of different stuff. And so I got a little bit into that because of that scenario, and so I'm going to do my top 25 new wave bands. So this period of my time lasted between September of 81 when I started school there and June of 83 when I left school there, and I spent a lot of time listening to that kind of music. So I thought maybe it would be good to give it a kind of a life of its own here. So we'll do the top 25 new wave bands, my favorite top 25 new wave bands. We'll do that on Wednesday, and I've got a bunch of top 25s now that I'm going to do for different genre, and this is just be one of the first ones. The other thing coming up on is our series, of course. We have 7 more battles this week. last week's battles. I think there was 6 of them in total, right? Yep, 6. Yeah, the last one was the IQ versus Nectar one. So I'm not going to tell anybody the results in case you haven't watched the video yet, but I had some very interesting results. There was a couple bands that kind of pulled a surprise on me, and I had to choose them even though it wasn't something I had thought would happen, but it did. And, they were all pretty tight battles, though. I think they were all pretty tight battles, and I don't think there was any landslide on any of them. So this week we've got another 7 battles. Be interesting. The outcome's going to be, I think, something that I'm not even knowing. I'm not even sure what's going to happen, because I've told people that I will listen to the albums, and then based on how I feel about the albums that day, that's the way I'm going to go. And even if that means the bands that I have traditionally put as my favorite bands, they might not make it. So that's just the way it's going to be. Okay, so that series will continue for this week. Upcoming series, probably in February. I kind of I was going to do it this month, but I decided on this because of my conversation with Ben. And so next in February, we're going to do a favorite year. So we'll be doing my favorite albums from the year 1973 for the month of February. So a little bit of a shorter month, but 73, did I say? No, actually, I'm going to stand corrected here. I was watching Sea of Tranquility. He's doing currently doing his 50 50-year anniversary of the albums from 73, and I had that in my brain. So I'm actually doing 1975. There's a significance for that year for me. That's the first year that I got into rock music, with first BTO and then with Kiss. So, and since that time, a lot of those albums that came out that year have become favorites of mine. So we'll be doing that year, not 1973, but 1975. And I'll reiterate that when I start the series at the end of this month. We start into February. Also coming in the future, did I write some stuff down? I thought I did. I guess I didn't. Oh yeah, so we will be doing some kind of a new album type show. I'm thinking middle of the month, so probably into the 3rd week, into week 27. We'll probably be doing something with that. I'm just not sure how I'm going to stage it or how I'm going to work it and what I'm going to talk about and how far I'm going to go. Like, I could talk about every single new album that comes out in this month, or I may just talk about the ones that I think are relevant here, or I may talk about the ones that I like. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this yet. Obviously, I won't be able to purchase all of these and listen to them all and do kind of a review that way. That would, first of all, be way too long, and second of all, be way too expensive and not necessary, because many of them I may or may not like, So, but I wanted to do something to kind of start on a future, because most of the music I listen to is from the 70s and 80s, mostly in the 70s, some of it even in the 60s, but I've been trying to update the way I look at music, and because most of these bands that you have that are around, were around in the 70s and 60s, a lot of the players are gone, and many more of them will be gone before the end of this decade. So if you want to keep rock current, part of it is to grow it, so we have to give a lot of attention to these new bands out that, because they don't get attention from radio stations, they don't get attention from promotions and all that kind of stuff. Now it's all about the internet, and this is the best way to promote them. And even making albums is difficult, because nobody buys that stuff as much anymore as they used to. They're all Spotifying and iTunes and all that. Nobody wants to own the physical element like I do. That's the way I like my albums this way, because I feel that albums were created to be listened to in the order that they're presented. Not everybody cares about that. Not everybody did that with their albums, but a lot of musicians, when they create an album, they try to have some kind of continuity, and they're telling kind of a story in a lot of cases. or they want the album flows that way, and you'd lose that if you start taking tracks out and just listening to them individually without context to the album. And at least in my opinion, that's why radio stations tend to only play the 5 biggest hits from any given band, right? And then all that other stuff that the band did that was so wonderful, nobody ever hears it because they won't play it. So anyways, so I want to try to kind of push forward on that particular project. It may not start this month, but I'm hoping to get it started so I can do it each month for this year. It may be a little bit haphazard at first as I kind of explore the avenue that I want to go, and I may have to change the way I do it a couple times till I get to a point where I'm comfortable with it. But we're going to work on it. It's always a work in progress. So for the foreseeable future, that's what's happening. We will be doing we'll be doing some other countries as well. The other three countries I have on my list to do are Canada, the whole European continent, and Australia. Those are the 3 right now. There may be others that come up. I may divide the Europeans into different sections too. I'm not sure how I want to do that, but I wanted, this was an idea that was put forth, so I want to kind of explore it and keep going there. I think the first one with the British and the last one with the Americans went very well. For me, it really showed the one thing I learned was how discrepant my music taste is towards the Americans and the British. If you look at the British collection of the top 25 British albums, they're almost all, well, a lot of them are progressive in nature. With the Americans, I don't think there was a single progressive band in there. Some might say Styx. I don't really count Styx. I think of them more of as arena rock and hard rock, and with some progressive elements. But I don't really think of them as a progressive rock band. Some people do though. But for the most part, I'm pretty much moved by a different set of principles with the American bands, and I think you'll see with the Canadian bands it's kind of a little bit of everything. And there's a lot of Canadian bands that I like. I may not own a lot of stuff by them, but there's certainly some bands I like. I think there's something that happens to you when it's your own country. It's almost like that. Those bands kind of know your feelings, right? Almost. And then, I've grown to like the Australian music scene quite a bit. I always did, but I think I like it a lot more now. And the same with the Europeans. There's a lot of European bands now kind of infiltrating my music, so definitely going to give that a feel as well. And then we have some other top 25s. I'm going to do a top 25 heavy metal one. I'm going to do a top 25 punk rock one. And I'll do one for the pop music as well. And maybe some other genres may pop in there at some point too. But we're going to start out this week with the top 25 new wave bands. I could have easily made it a top 40. Like there's so many of them that I have some interest in or like to some degree, but we'll stick with 25 is good. So anyways, that's what's happening this week. As for new permanent shows, the only one that may take place and probably won't be until the spring will be the live album thing again. It won't be Friday Night Live Experience again. But I haven't decided on exactly when and how to fit it in. But once I do, that show will definitely be coming back. As for the Psychedelic Snack, which is the one I talked about, that might have to wait a bit. I'm not sure if I have enough psychedelic music in my collection to make it worth trying to start a show. I'm pretty sure I could do maybe 10 or 12 shows, but then I might be a little thin at this point, so we will see. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. Make your comments if there's anything you want to suggest. This is the place to do it, because this is the show that we talk about that. And we'll be back we'll be back tonight with Ben's album challenge. And for those of you who have been following this series, the morning series this morning would have been Camel and White Wing, so you'd have to go back 4 hours to watch that one. So let me know what you think, and we'll be seeing you soon. So you have a good day. Prog Monster out. Goodbye.